Hello and welcome. You are watching the Marblecast. In my last video, Fire Marble and I covered my biggest project to date, the MSFL. At the end of the video, we referred to a second story about the final event, about the event's unlikely winner. This is that story, produced by another one of my awesome team managers, Orsa. I hope you enjoy the story of Jinx.
The Physics Fanatics had a fantastic start to the inaugural season of the MSFL. After the first 3 quarters of events had been played, they were top of the standings by 2 points, coming off a curling gold. However, 4 teams sat within 3 points of the top of the standings. All of those teams had very good reasons to be vying for contention. Alpha was the star of Team Fire. Icon was out there winning medals for the Super Wisps, and Starry Sky had a team that, while not great individually, worked fantastically together. For the Physics Fanatics, their duo of Ironclad, their trusty captain, and Jinx, their superstar they had gotten from just their 3rd pick in the draft, were doing wonders, particularly in team events. That was, after all, how they had gotten both of their gold medals thus far. Going into the 10th event, spirits were high among the Physics Fanatics. Unfortunately, Moxie was only able to scrape together an 8th place finish out of 9 teams. This dropped the team 1 spot to 2nd, but they remained in contention with 1st place Team Fire, who was now 6 points ahead. And the very next event was Collision. This was good news for the Fanatics, as team events were their specialty after all. But time was up. The Physics Fanatics were unable to show up for Collision due to a bomb threat of all things at the airport, leading them to be disqualified from the event under MSFL rules. This devastated their chance of winning the league. While it was technically still possible, they'd need a literal miracle. The team dropped a full 3 spots into 5th, as the DNS left them with not the 1 point obtained from placing last in the MSFL Season 1 scoring system, but a goose egg instead. The chances of a title were nearly non-existent, but the chances of a podium were slightly more in reach for the Physics Fanatics. However, up to this point, the Physics Fanatics hadn't even medaled in an individual event, and that was with superstar marbles like Ironclad and Jinx. So imagine the shock of Physics Fanatics fans when manager RCD selected neither the captain Ironclad, their all-rounder Jinx, or their designated speed marble Moxie, but their 5th round pick, Jinx. Jinx was an interesting pick to say the least. The marble was, to their credit, quite fast, but other than that, they were rated quite poorly among most other MSFL marbles. Compare that with Jinx, one of the hottest marbles in the league, or even with Moxie, who would run the sprint for the Fanatics. Manager RCD justified their pick before the event's start by saying, quote, "We've been training Jinx for this event exclusively for the whole season, and while Jinx is better at the event in theory, Jinx has already competed in a lot of events, so we'll have Jinx competing. We're hoping that what they do out on the Elim race track is enough to secure us a top 3. Critics, though, were less confident in Jinx's abilities, especially when compared with their competitors. In particular, title frontrunners Team Fire and Super Wisps had selected Alpha and Icon respectively, 2 marbles who had dominated the league all season. Starry Sky, meanwhile, selected Blink, one of the youngest and fastest marbles in the league, in an attempt to steal a podium. Night Raid selected Daz, a marble who was known to do well when competition was high. Jinx, meanwhile, had only ran a single event before, and while they did get a team bronze in that event with Steeplechase, Jinx ended up being the worst marble that scored a time on their team. Needless to say, fans were not confident in Jinx. Pundits began rolling out with articles that placed the Physics Fanatics at 6th overall in the season, behind even the Moonwalkers due to their seeming late-season collapse. Most believed that there was no chance the team could even podium, despite being just 6 points back. Many were focused on a 2-way race for the podium and a 3-way race for the title. Absolutely no one saw what was coming in the final event. Pure dominance. On the day of the final event, Jinx lined up with the 8 other competitors in the starting blocks for the elimination race. According to Jinx himself, the Physics Fanatics were, quote, "pretty doubtful I would be able to pull anything off." Most people weren't watching Jinx though. They were watching the marbles on their right, Alpha and Icon.
And finally we have our title contenders, and of course it comes down to this. The 2 standout stars of the season, the 2 most likely, most valuable...
Jinx wasn't shaken by this though. Far from it. In their first race, Jinx was able to keep pace just behind the leaders, even beating out Alpha, one of the favorites for the event. Jinx was feeling good, but the next race would be a major shock to their system. A bad start was followed by a worse middle section, and suddenly, Jinx found themselves battling for last with Wraith from Infestation. Jinx looked forward, seeing Alpha, Icon, Defiant all finishing. They couldn't let it end like this, not when the competition was just beginning. With a final lurch,
Blink across first again. Alpha, Defiant, Icon. Who's out though? Jinx survives and Wraith is out. Tough ending for Infestation.
Jinx began to celebrate, but that was cut short by the realization that the physics fanatics were no longer mathematically able to win the championship. Jinx reflected on the moment later, saying, quote, "I barely cared that we were eliminated from contention. I had survived, and the podium was the end goal anyway, even if no one believed in me." Jinx went back into the starting block. A little shaken up, yes, but the important part was that they'd survived. Now I know at the beginning I said pure domination, and you might be thinking that so far, this has been barely scraping by, not domination. Just bear with me here. Things are about to go a heck of a lot better for the star of our show. Round 3 went much better for Jinx. They showed that their scare at the back was a fluke by staying around the top pack throughout the race, eventually slotting into 4th a little more than half a second behind Icon. However, when Jinx looked back, their heart nearly stopped.
And it's not gonna happen. Night Raid fall. They'll end with 75 points and definitely won't be safe on the podium.
In a post-event interview, Jinx would say, quote, "My first instinct was to jump for joy. Daz eliminating Night Raid in round 3 was huge for our chances. But when I saw the look at their face, I couldn't help but feel bad for the Marble. Daz is an incredible athlete and deserves so much more than what happened on the course." I then started to roll back up to the starting gate, and I cast a shooting glance at the team on the sidelines. Clover and Moxie were talking nervously about something. Scarface was looking away. Zix was trying to do all the math in real time, and only Ironclad was staring back at me. He gave me a little nod, and that moment let me know I couldn't let these guys down. They'd done so well all season, and anything less than a podium was undeserving of what my teammates had set me up for. Night Raid gave me the opportunity, and I know I had to take it, no matter the odds. Turns out, Jinx was right. The next round showed that they had found their groove. Jinx stayed by the front throughout round 4, eventually making a last-minute lurch to steal 2nd from Alpha. Jinx would later say, quote, "I recall going back up to the gates to start round 5 when I heard Zix yell my name. Their voice was barely discernible, but all I could hear them say was, 'All you need is top 2 in front of Blink.' By this point, I was sure that we were out of contention for the title, but giving me an objective at this point really helped." Jinx once again hung around the top pack of competitors in round 5, slotting in a respectable 3rd behind Alpha and Icon. But when looking back to see who was eliminated...
And it's a beautiful line from Blink. They get the pass and will advance. The Moonwalkers end this season right back where they started it, in 5th.
Blink had barely beaten out Defiant for advancement in round 5, meaning the podium battle would extend to round 6. Jinx themselves seemed relieved to have made it this far, but the next heat would decide either the podium or the title.
But it all comes down to these 4. It's always been these 4. Night Raid pulled off a great comeback, but all season long it's been these 4 teams. Starry Sky, Physics Fanatics looking to steal the bronze. Team Fire, the Super Wisps, battling for the gold. If both Starry Sky and Physics Fanatics survive this heat, one of them will get the bronze. That would also mean the title would be decided with this race. If the Super Wisps and Team Fire both make the final, Night Raid will keep the bronze. It all comes down to this. Round 6 between Alpha, Icon, Blink, and Jinx. Here we go.
Immediately, Jinx rocketed out of the starting gate, trying to find the best line on the course. Quickly, they noticed Icon approaching them from behind, and were eventually able to force them into the sidewall. Jinx, checking back, the finish line right in front of them.
Alpha needs the speed of a lifetime. Jinx across the line. Who will be out? It's done! The Super Wisps are champions!
Jinx would later say, quote, "I heard a huge cheer erupt through the stadium, and all of a sudden, I was confused. I saw Blink go across the line, and I immediately thought, hey, it's not over. And then I realized Alpha was out, and Starry Sky was eliminated from contention a long time ago. I was so focused on my own battle with Blink that I wasn't even thinking about the title race. Icon Celebrations gave me a little bit of time to talk with Zix, and I was able to confirm that if I was just able to beat Blink, we'd be on the overall podium." Jinx entered the starting blocks as confident as ever. As Icon and the Super Wisp celebrations wrapped up, the 3 marbles who would be on the podium for this event, in some order or another, looked at each other. One of them had nothing to play for. The other 2 had a podium on the line. Icon himself would later say, "I knew then and there after beating Alpha it was going to be between those 2 in the final race. I'd done my job. They needed to prove that they could do theirs." Suddenly, the starting gun fired. Jinx got off to the fantastic start that they had for the past few rounds, while Blink and Icon were fading behind the marble. Jinx had found their groove, taking the exact same line that they had in the 6th round. They easily blazed across the line in first, and then turned back in anticipation.
Blink! No way! What a play by Blink! They pushed aside Icon at the last moment!
And just as Icon predicted, it came down to the final race. Jinx versus Blink. The Physics Fanatics versus Starry Sky. A single point separated the teams in the standings. But on paper, Blink, the speedster, seemed much better than Jinx. However, Jinx had bested easily the 2 best marbles in the league in the race so far. Just one more stood between them and the individual gold, plus the team bronze. Could Jinx pull off the upset of a lifetime?
And now our final round. Jinx and Blink to decide the bronze for this season. The stage is set. We are all ready. And we are rolling for the final time this season. Jinx with yet another great start. Blink will play catch up again, but we've seen this before. Both marbles hit obstacles. It continues to be close. Blink can avoid that edge. Ed cannot. That's going to lose a lot of time. Jinx would need to make a mistake here. The fairy tale ending for Blink is fading away. But the fairy tale is just beginning for the Physics Fanatics. From being forced to miss collision to recovering all the way back to the season podium, Jinx has saved the Physics Fanatics.
I honestly couldn't have said it better. When faced with insurmountable odds, the best marbles in the league, from the best teams in the league, no one would believe that the young marble with a history of injury could pull it off. No one believed in the marble whose team had scored 0 points in the penultimate event, and the marble who had only played 1 event thus far. But that marble proved them all wrong. Only one marble was capable of doing all that. One marble was capable of pulling off this legendary upset against the fellow top teams, and that is why their name will forever be etched in the books of MSFL history.